On this Tuesday night, getting ready to be grounded. WestJet pilots set a date for strike action.
It is a very emotional day for all of us.
What's behind it and what it could mean for your summer vacation. Alberta's relentless wildfires, the multiplying number of displaced people,
I'm really petrified about the situation,
and their chokehold on air quality. Real fears about artificial intelligence.
I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong.
The man behind ChatGPT urges regulation as the use of AI expands. Plus, they were busted for the biggest jewel heist in modern history, why critics say their prison time doesn't fit the infamous crime.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with news about a possible pilot strike right before the May long weekend. The union representing pilots at WestJet and Swoop have issued a 72-hour strike notice. It means nearly 1,900 pilots could walk off the job at 3 a.m. Mountain Time on Friday, grounding the airline's entire fleet of around 180 aircraft and affecting 700 flights per day and the thousands of passengers booked on them. Contract talks are still underway, but the airline says it could lock out the pilots before the strike deadline. And Gaviola has our top story tonight.
Air travelers should brace for grounded flights, cancellations, and disruptions starting Friday.
We have flight attendants, we have maintenance personnel that will also be affected by this. And we also have our passengers that have booked tickets and expect to get to the destinations that they've booked. It is a very emotional day for all of us here.
Among the sticking points between the two sides, compensation. WestJet says their salaries are among the highest in Canada. Pilots, who are in demand globally, say they're severely underpaid by North American standards.
Without the pilot, the industry is on its knees.
WestJet's response to the strike notice, a lockout notice, saying it sincerely regrets the inconvenience and uncertainty this causes guests, adding it is committed to reaching a deal. Travel agents are scrambling to find alternatives, including less than direct routes.
Sometimes via Toronto or Montreal, or in some cases the United States, just to reassure people that they will actually get to their destination for that cruise or wedding or family event that can't be postponed by 2 or 3 days while they're delayed on travel.
The cost to consumers, time, money, and effort.
It's probably a good idea for them to book, unfortunately, another flight on another airline, possibly with a possibility of getting a full refund of that should WestJet come through.
If disruptions continue for weeks, air travel could rapidly become a headache during peak summer season.
If there are fewer flights because of ongoing strikes or problems like this, flights are going to be even more expensive for the travelers.
Just the threat of action will have an impact on forward bookings for WestJet. This will damage whether people book with the airline because they'll be concerned about what happens in the future, even if this issue is resolved.
Many say the reputational damage has already begun. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Canada's Transport Minister is in Detroit to announce a new cross-border electric vehicle corridor. Omar Alghabra teamed up with his American counterpart. The plan is for EV charging stations from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Quebec City, one of the busiest passenger and trade routes between the U.S. and Canada. The chargers will be no more than 80 kilometers apart along the nearly 1,400-kilometer route. South Korea has a huge electric battery market, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is there now ahead of the G7 summit in Japan. On his first official visit to the country, both sides are pledging to build stronger ties and move away from dependence on China. Mackenzie Gray is traveling with the Prime Minister. Mackenzie.
Donna, for the second time this calendar year, Justin Trudeau has come to Asia, selling Canada's new plan to contain China.
In the bustling center of Seoul, massive billboards light the night sky. And the Koreans hope they'll soon be made from key Canadian materials.
Korean companies are very much interested in diversifying supplies of the critical minerals, and Canada can be a very good choice.
Eager to reduce their reliance on critical minerals from China, the Koreans have turned to Canada to help fuel the second largest semiconductor and electric battery market in the world. And Justin Trudeau is ready to help. The Prime Minister and the South Korean President, who recently met in Ottawa, will sign a deal to expand critical mineral trade on this trip. An example of what the Prime Minister hopes will become a hallmark of the Liberals' Indo-Pacific strategy. The plan? forge stronger business and political ties with friendly Asian countries to limit China's influence in the region.
One thing about Canada, the world's looking to us for energy, in particular LNG, and for critical minerals. And you're seeing the investments come. Now we need to make sure we have the trade-enabling infrastructure to get those products to market.
It seems that every time I'm in Asia, there's something going on back home.
But concerns over another deal between the feds and a major South Korean company could put a damper on the tour. Multinational car maker Stellantis and their Korean partner, battery maker LG Energy Solutions, said this week the Liberals haven't followed through on their promise to support an EV plant in Windsor, and they've put a stop to construction. Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne blames the province.
If we want to end that drama we've been seeing over the last few days, it's only for our friends in Ontario to pay their fair share.
Canada and South Korea will also sign a new pact to increase the number of young people allowed to work and study in both countries, which will increase the already 220,000 people in Canada who say they have Korean origins.
I don't think there was a time Korea and Canada was close as now.
Once the Prime Minister wraps up his two-day trip to South Korea, he'll fly to Hiroshima to join other world leaders for the G7 in Japan. Donna.
All right, Mackenzie Gray in Seoul, South Korea, thanks. A hearing is underway in Ottawa to probe allegations of a campaign of intimidation by the communist government in China. Conservative MP Michael Chongs says Canadian intelligence officials confirmed to him he and his family were targeted by a Chinese consular official who has since been expelled from the country. And Chong told the hearing he believes the public finding out about Chinese interference through leaks to the media is a symptom of a national security system that isn't working. Our chief political correspondent David Aiken is following this. David.
Well, Donna, Michael Chong appeared before the Procedure and House Affairs Committee earlier this evening, and this is the committee that has spent the last few weeks looking at the broader issue of foreign interference in Canada's elections, but now it is focusing in on the Chong case, and all parties want to know more about what happened.
The last several weeks have been a trying time for me and my family. But it is important to note that my case is but only one of many Canadians who have been threatened on Canadian soil by authoritarian governments and who have suffered in silence.
In a way, I wish this hadn't happened to you, but perhaps it will prompt us to do even better in the years to come.
A key question for the committee as it begins its probe into Chong's case is, why wasn't Chong told about this alleged plot back in 2021, back when he was meeting with policy experts at the University of Toronto, near the very Chinese consulate where the alleged plot was hatched?
To know that just a mere several blocks away for several years, somebody was actively trying to collect information about me and my family in the PRC was deeply disconcerting. And to know that the government of Canada knew about this and didn't do anything about it was deeply disappointing.
As for the Conservatives, they say the buck stops with the Prime Minister and that he is ultimately responsible for the failure to inform Chong about the alleged plot.
It's clear that the sole responsibility for the machinery of government is the Prime Minister's.
The PM says he only found out about this alleged Chong plot earlier this month, and within days, his government expelled the Chinese diplomat alleged to have been in on the plot. And the PM ordered Canada's security agencies to immediately notify ministers, bump it right up to the political level, whenever Canada's security agencies pick up mention of any threat, no matter how trivial, against any member of Canada's Parliament. Donna.
David Aiken in Ottawa, thanks. In Alberta, the heat and high winds are unrelenting. More than 80 wildfires are now burning across that province. Canadian Armed Forces personnel have been deployed to some of the communities under threat, including Fox Creek and Grande Prarie. Our Neetu Garcha is in Valleyview. Neetu, that town is also on the front lines and was evacuated yesterday?
That's right, Donna. And you can see one of the police blockades behind me. You might also be able to see some of the thick smoke. These are just some of the clear signs that the wildfire that forced this entire community to flee came very close.
Downed power lines still smoldering Tuesday beside Highway 43, about 100 kilometers east of Grande Prarie. And there's an active firefight above. Flames came within 10 kilometers of Valleyview. People in the small town of about 2,000 were forced to leave on Monday.
Foggy, zero visibility. Yeah, like everything is white. As if like the town has been eaten by the smoke.
Residents like Eric Tavis and his family fled to an evacuation center in nearby Whitecourt, already supporting hundreds of evacuees from other communities.
I'm really petrified about the situation that had happened, because this is my first time to be able to experience these.
With new evacuations adding to the more than 20,000 people already displaced across Alberta, he says tensions are high, but community support is going to get them through it. A sentiment shared by Valleyview resident Melodine DeMerchant.
It blows me away how it all came together. Community, businesses, people, strangers, just everybody came forward.
She's checking up on her now evacuated agricultural complex. For over a week, it sheltered animals for evacuees until they were evacuated themselves.
We turned it into the sort of command center for the pet evacuation. At one point, we had 167 dogs and cats and 2 turtles.
There's no doubt that this wildfire got close to Valleyview, and we understand that for people in the community, it must have been a very frightening event.
Fire officials say Canadian Armed Forces members have been deployed to areas like this one where communities and lives are most at risk.
Provincial officials say shifting winds and strong gusts have created dangerous conditions on the ground, and they can use all the help they can get, including from the Canadian Armed Forces and from the public's diligence. As they say, historically, this time of year, most fires have been human-caused. Donna?
All right, Neetu Garcha in Valleyview, Alberta. Thank you. A shift in the wind has pushed the forest fire smoke south. Heather Yourex-West is in Calgary. Heather.
Donna, wildfire smoke has become all too familiar during the summer months, especially in Western Canada. But Tuesday saw one of the worst air quality days for Calgary in recent memory. At the top of the scale, 10 plus or very high risk. Now, officials are warning everyone to take the health warnings seriously, with children, older adults, and anyone with respiratory lung conditions in particular being urged to avoid any heavy activity outside. Now, the situation is set to improve slightly heading into Wednesday, but forecasters say the smoky skies will be with us through the weekend. Donna?
All right, as will the heat and the wind. Heather Yourex-West in Calgary, thanks. The federal government is proposing changes to Canada's bail system intended to make it harder for repeat offenders to be given bail. It's a response to cases of people accused of committing violent crimes while out on bail. Touria Izri looks at what the government wants to change and how it's being received.
9 Canadian police officers have died on the job since September, including Ontario Provincial Police Constable Greg Pershala. The man accused of murdering him was out on bail at the time.
A person should not be out on bail if they have a history of violence.
Justice Minister David Lametti has tabled reforms to reverse the onus from prosecutors to the accused. That means the person behind bars now needs to prove why they should be released.
What we're doing for certain violent offenses is changing the default position and making sure that it is only in cases where there isn't a threat to public security that they will get bail.
Those offenses include weapons charges. The move comes after a public push from police and the provinces.
I've been a cop now for almost 37 years. I've never seen circumstances like this.
Last March, every single premier and territorial leader sent a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pleading for bail reform. The federal government changed the laws back in 2019, which the opposition says made things worse.
Justin Trudeau's catch and release bail system has unleashed a wave of violent crime across the country.
You're going to put some number on it.
But criminal defense lawyers warned stricter bail conditions can sometimes have unintended consequences.
Yeah, the problem with bail reform is that if you get it wrong, it can actually make the public less safe. If you detain someone, they actually are more likely to commit an offense when they get out of jail.
There are also fears the changes may marginalize vulnerable populations like Black and Indigenous people.
Our bail system already presently detains racialized people at a far higher rate.
The Justice Minister calls these reforms targeted and says there will be a review period in the next 5 years. But David Lametti could not say how many repeat offenders this will affect. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
Canada's inflation rate rose slightly in April. Inflation went up from 4.3% in March to 4.4%. Before this, it was falling every month since hitting an 8.1% peak in June of 2022. Trying to control artificial intelligence technology coming up, what the man behind ChatGPT says needs to happen. The head of the company responsible for creating the artificial intelligence chatbot ChatGPT testified before U.S. Congress today. He supports regulatory guardrails to minimize harm from the technology.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. And we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening.
Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI. He says his company's technology may destroy some jobs, but will also create new ones. He proposes creating an agency to issue licenses for AI, plus safety regulations and tests it must pass before being released to the public. Tech giants have poured billions into the technology, calling it transformative, but it's also been cited in empowering scams and spreading falsehoods, which Altman agrees is concerning. Advanced assault ahead. Russia uses one of its most expensive weapons to attack Ukraine. The British government has announced it will work with the Dutch government to build an international coalition to help procure F-16 fighter jets for Ukraine. Britain has also promised to supply hundreds of attack drones. Ukraine is relying on Western support to push back Russian attacks. Overnight, a barrage of Russian missiles and drones hit Kyiv. As Crystal Gamansing reports, there's evidence Russia deployed one of its most advanced weapons, a hypersonic missile that moves 10 times faster than the speed of sound.
Images widely circulating on social media show a nighttime barrage on Kyiv. Ukraine claims it shot down 6 hypersonic missiles plus 12 other types of bombs, including explosive drones.
It's clear that they want to hit the very heart of the country and to keep the whole of Ukrainian nation tense.
The Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson says a hypersonic ballistic missile took out an American Patriot air defense system, one of the most expensive donated weapons in Ukraine's arsenal. It also claims to have destroyed 7 newly donated UK Storm Shadow missiles. Ukraine reported damages from falling debris, but would not say if any weapons were lost. Ukrainians did lose the little peace they had when the air alert alarm sounded early Tuesday morning. Countless images have been shared of the haunting thuds of explosions and people scurrying away from windows. Some fled to shelters. Others were put in the safest, closest option.
All lives were protected. All missiles were shut down, including ballistic ones.
Vladimir Zelensky addressed a rare meeting of the Council of Europe. The 46 leaders may approve a registry to help Ukraine track damages, a means of attempting to hold Russia responsible for victim compensation. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
The American Central Intelligence Agency is appealing to Russians to share war secrets with U.S. spies. This video in Russian has been posted on social media. The CIA promises to protect the safety of Russians if they make contact through a portal on the dark web. The video, which reflects on heroism and endurance, shows fictional characters upset with their country, grappling with how to get in touch. The CIA says it wants to hear from Russian military officers, intelligence specialists, and diplomats, and says people around you may not want to hear the truth, but we do. Russia claims it hasn't paid attention to the video and says its special services track all Western spy activity. Controversial sentence next. A German gang's punishment for a giant jewel heist. The thieves who hit a museum in Germany in 2019 hoped they'd get away with one of the biggest jewel heists in history. They did for a while. They stole more than $160 million worth of jewelry, but today 5 of them face the music. Mike Armstrong reports.
Prosecutors had a delicate balancing act to play in this case and may have missed the mark. The severity of the sentences, some have said, don't match the seriousness of the crime. They blame a controversial plea deal struck with the thieves. The presiding judge says without an agreement, the stolen jewelry wouldn't have been recovered. The heist was just before 5 a.m. November 25th, 2019. Power to the neighborhood was knocked out by a homemade explosive, and thieves broke in through a window. They'd already cut a hole in the iron grill over the window days earlier. Now, what they hit was one of the oldest museums in Europe. It's called the Green Vault, housed in an historic castle in the city of Dresden. The thieves knew what they were after. In a matter of minutes, they stole 21 pieces, some dating as far back as the 17th century. As part of the plea deal, the thieves helped recover most of the jewelry. 3 pieces are still missing, and others were also damaged. The judge says the state can now launch civil lawsuits against the thieves. The men are all in their 20s and all members of the same family. The German tabloids have called them the Remo clan. Members are usually mixed up in extortion, fraud, and robbery. In return for the confessions, the men's sentences were capped. The stiffest sentence for the 5 was 6 years and 2 months. The 6th family member was acquitted. The judge says he had a watertight alibi. Well, the other reason the plea deal is coming under fire is it only included the confession. The men didn't have to give information or incriminate anyone else. And experts say it's very likely other members of the clan were involved. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Grant's old mill on Sturgeon Creek in Winnipeg. It used to grind wheat into flour back in the 1800s. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.